We think a lot about censorship as it applies to the government taking action on the people, or there being some sort of official censorship. But in fact, our communities do a pretty good job themselves in censoring the things that they don't like, and that really raises questions about the application of the First Amendment as it pertains to everyday people living everyday lives. So, in the early days of our country, even at the point that we were being founded on this ideal of the First Amendment of freedom of speech and having freedom for religion and to challenge the government, not everybody was in favor of the revolution. And if you weren't, if you were pro-British, publishing shops were being attacked. Publishers were they're having their presses destroyed. So even at that point, we were willing to accept censoring those things that we didn't believe in. Censorship today takes the face of this guy, really. This is Jimmy the Greek. He was a broadcaster who had the misfortune of being, he was questioned while he was at a dinner. Someone asked him a question about African American athletes. He gave a very inflammatory response, and his whole career was derailed from that one response. He was pretty well chased from the airwaves. He never got his job back. He ended up dying, not certainly because he was censored, but the effect that his statement had on his career was a form of censorship. We've seen the same thing with Don Imus, the radio personality who made derogatory comments about a women's basketball team. Howard Stern, who was on was mainstream radio, very popular, ended up moving to satellite because of a variety of restrictions that were placed on him that he felt were unfair. Even shows like South Park were censored for episodes that they've aired that you would consider under artistic endeavors, but the community spoke out and said, hey, we don't agree with this, certainly looking at ESPN and its personalities. So we kind of have to look at how we react to things that we don't agree with, and at what point does that transcend into censorship. One of the clearest examples that we have are these three women. These are the Dixie Chicks. And in 2003, they were giving a concert in England, and they made this comment that I have here for you about George W. Bush, and it dealt with our pursuit of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. And once they made this statement, their records were burned, their shows were canceled. They suffered really a pretty dramatic censorship because people didn't agree and they felt that they were speaking out against the country. Now, legally speaking, of course, we have the right to do that. There was no, they didn't need to go for a legal challenge as to whether they were being censored because people just stopped listening to them. So at that point, we really have to start looking at our own impact on the First Amendment. Another more recent circumstance that we've had is is now this movement to get rid of what we call the R word, and I think you know the word I'm talking about, and it's in the document here. People believe that it's offensive, it's derogatory. It certainly started out with a different meaning than the one that we've applied to individuals and the one that we're trying to restrict now. But how do you feel about the idea that we are preventing people from using this word? Is this something that you feel is an appropriate use of community censorship? And then we have what's known as the Hecklers Veto, which says basically if you are loud enough in your dispute of something that you can cause other people to become quiet about their views. And we saw it actually in action here in 2014 with the Bible Believers versus Wayne County. There was actually these Christian evangelists went into this community and they ended up being stoned by a mob of Muslims at an Arab festival. So they went into an Arab festival proselytizing about Jesus Christ, and there was pretty violent reaction to that. So they were ordered to leave the area under threat of arrest, and when they took it to court, the Sixth Circuit actually ruled that their provocative preaching could be restricted and it wouldn't be a violation of the First Amendment because their speech was inciting such a riotous response. So we're going to talk quite a bit about how we view these kind of circumstances of basically censorship. And then we're really going to look at, and we're going to look at a movie that deals with this, with corporate media ownership and the effect that it's had on our understanding of issues, whether or not we are being fed the information that is appropriate for an informed electorate, whether it's being clouded by individual judgment. We have the circumstances where candidates are considered to be not electable before they ever get before the electorate. And so if the media is charged with controlling whether or not we see candidates candidates and we don't get to them because of that, what effect is that having on democracy? What about big issues like climate change or the war? Think about the placement of stories at all, or which stories make the front page, or which stories are on a homepage or tweeted out. All of this agenda setting really can be construed as a form of censorship, and we're going to talk a great deal about that.